Another method we can use to solve quadratics is known as the square root method. In this method, we're going to isolate the squared quantity and then take the square root. The square root method will only work if your equation has just one term with an x in it. That's going to allow us to isolate and then take the square root. So let's start with the example on the left. I'm going to isolate the squared, so get the x squared by itself. That's going to involve adding 12 to both sides and then dividing both sides by 3. So x squared has to equal 4. To solve for x, I am going to take the square root of both sides, but I will need to include a plus or minus, because whether you square a positive or a negative value, you get the same answer. There are actually two different numbers we can square that will give us 4. So if you're using the square root method, you have to include a plus or minus. The square root of x squared is x. Square root of 4 is 2, so x would equal positive or negative 2. I've got two solutions, positive 2 and negative 2. We can use the exact same method for the equation on the right. In this case, the quantity squared is already by itself on one side. So to get rid of the squared, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget the plus or minus. Now on the left-hand side, I'm left with 2x minus 5 equals plus or minus square root of 20. Now, 20 is not a perfect square. We could use a calculator to get a decimal approximation. Although I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm actually going to simplify this radical, because even though 20 is not a perfect square, it's the same thing as 4 times 5, and 4 is a perfect square. So the square root of 4 times 5, root 4 is 2. So square root of 20 actually turns into a 2 root 5. So I'm going to rewrite this as 2x minus 5 equals plus or minus 2 root 5. Now I have to get the x by itself, so that's going to involve adding 5. So let's see, 2x equals 5 plus or minus 2 root 5. And then finally, I'm going to finish by dividing by both sides by 2. And that's my final answer. X is 5 plus or minus 2 root 5 over 2. I can't really simplify this any further, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Again, if I wanted a decimal approximation, I could put that into a calculator.